Yeah, I was chatting with a friend at the weekend um, about this loss of direction. I'm not sure of the exact term for it, but if we focus on it from the perspective of business, where a lot of the statistics and data is virtual rather than actual, right? There's a lot of virtual information rather than actual information. If you look at climate data, it's climate models, like business models, right? There's a lot of modeling done where there's simulations of reality rather than actual reality. And the result of these simulations is that we live in a culture which we can describe as post culture. Yeah. Post culture, meaning post meaning after, right? After things. So, um, so it is possible to describe modern culture as post normal, right? Because we've been given this perspective of new normal. So we're kind of post normal, because what was normal for, I would say, sentient feeling human beings um, is now to a great extent not normal anymore. If you go into the book The Great Reset, and Klaus Schwab, who is a global organizer of major organizations within the World Health Organization and the United Nations, then what you find from his perspective is that he talked about the rewiring of the human system within the body. Yeah, where he talked about rebuilding things like DNA structures, which is that's a whole different topic. But if you see like the rebuilding of what's within people as the foundation, then what's going to happen outside within culture, within business, within interaction between people, that's going to change as well. And so what was normal is not normal. We're post-normal. We're post-truth because we're post-normal, which means that when you give information to people which you know to be true, and they take your information and they go with it. Like if you want to help a company and you're like, no, but this is wrong and this is not going to work, and you give the information to people and they're like, they take the truth that you give them to help them and they throw it away because they're actually living in a simulation, a virtual concept, then we're post-truth. And when you start doing that, you've become post everything, like post health, right? It was normal for people to get sick. It is normal for people to get sick if you're a normal person, right? That's how the body builds its strength, right? As you lifting heavy weights is to a certain extent painful and difficult, but that pain, not too much, but a little bit of that pain is how we grow. Look at how children grow and they get growing pains. Their body hurts, but it's natural because the muscles are stretching and the bones are stretching and the parts that connect everything are stretching and the heart is growing and the lungs are growing and all these different body parts are all growing together. And when that happens, it doesn't happen in a perfect way. It happens in an imperfectly perfect way. And children get growing pains just from that process, which is natural. And we're being led to believe that pain is a bad thing, and it's not, because pain tells us where the problem is. It tells us what we need to look at. It tells us what we need to work on. You know, if you've got a sore shoulder, then you have to be careful, or maybe you used that muscle too much or something. It's the idea that we can be perfect in everything is, as human beings, is a giant mistake. Because we have to, I think, develop or organically. It can't be a manipulated process, because whatever every disease that we try to fix, still here, right? Every disease that we try to eradicate, the tuberculosis and the polio and all of the measles and the mumps and the things that children get naturally, right? It's bad for your children to get these diseases. They shouldn't, but that's how their body develops its natural immunity, and natural immunity is strength. The same way that being in the gym is strength, and getting on a bike is strength. It's more comfortable to be in your car. You get there faster, but if you get on your bike, then it's probably relatively a healthier experience, as long as you don't get run over by a car or something like that, right? So so there's a lot of people, as a result of living in this confusion. Okay, let me give you an example of and they lose their compass because they're living in this confusion. Okay, let me give you an example. I should take a medicine because the medicine that you take doesn't work. So I should take the same medicine that you take. Now, read into that whatever you will in an intelligent perspective, but it's madness, is what it is. If you take a medicine and it doesn't work, then forcing me to take the medicine because the medicine didn't work for you is just really silly. It's post logic, right? It doesn't have any sense in reality at all. And if you can get someone to do one thing that is not logical, that is not practical, that is not sensible, then they'll do more. Right? As I always said in the past, there's never just one beer. Okay? When you my friends would say, "Come to the bar. We'll just go for one beer." Okay. Right. Right. You know, realizing that, you know, that everybody has to buy everybody a drink, and one beer becomes 5 beers, and that's life, right? Yeah, and then you have to, like, how many beers did you have? One? Just, I don't know. I can't remember. After you've had 2 or 3, it doesn't really matter how many more you've had after that. It is what it is. So yeah, once you can, people buy into it. Becomes a belief system. Yeah. The work becomes almost there's a lot of crossover between habit and religion. So what you do on a daily basis is your habits. Your habits create your world, and if you believe in what you do, then that creates a religion based on your habits. And there's for people, work is now like a religious experience. You can't question it. It's like, you can't, if you're Christian, you can't question the existence of God. Well, I'm Christian, but I believe you can, because it's silly not to ask questions. I mean, that's what my brain tells me. It's just like, when you start believing that only you are right and everyone else is wrong, you completely miss the point. Yeah. So it and it always circles back in a horrible way, because when you limit other people's choices, they will probably end up limiting yours as well. And so it just becomes a limiting experience for everybody. It's uh, it's hard not to treat other people the way that they treat you, which is again one of the religious teachings. But people have lost their compass completely in terms of what should be viewed as practical, normal, sensible, breathing, right? Taking large amounts of vitamins and minerals to be healthy, getting regular exercise, turning off the noise, getting away from television and radio and media and newspapers, which will constantly track everything that is going on. Which is not a bad thing if you want to be productive. But happiness can't be planned. You can plan to do something, and you can imagine it's going to have a certain effect, but you can't completely plan happiness. Happiness requires what's called serendipity. It's the unexpected things. Yeah. Your daughter makes you happy because she does things that you could not imagine and that you would never do. That's why she makes you happy. Now, crazily enough, if your partner did that, it would probably make you unhappy. Because that's the way we are as people, as adults. We tend to approach every situation with a certain level of expectation. But we give more freedom to children, and we should give more freedom to children as well. And I think if you look, from my perspective, if you look at the world right now, the children appear in many circumstances to know more than the adults. And they appear to be able to teach us what the adults have forgotten. They're teaching us love, they're teaching us kindness, they're teaching us forgiveness, they're teaching us human contact and fun, and to love and to be in the same space as people. They're teaching us all the good things, and we need to recognize that. And here's a religious teaching which is true across the board for everything. Anyone who makes the mistake of thinking authority is truth rather than truth being authority has lost all ability to make the right decision. Yeah. So anyone who says that John is right because John is a professor at the university. Now, John might be right, but it's not John's position at the university as a professor that makes him right. It's speaking the truth that makes him right. Yeah. It might just as easily be wrong. And so the what's called the fallacy of the argument to authority, which is that, authority is always right, always leads to a bad place at the end of the day, because the only authority is what is true in a situation, because that is the only thing that will lead us to make the right decisions at the end of the day. And when we think authority is truth, we stop asking questions. And when we stop asking questions, we stop learning. And when we stop learning, we're dead. That's the case in every situation, because it's the same. You might as well be dead if you stop learning, because there's no real growth or mental development happening, or you just try to reinforce the wrongness of your own position, which is which is a dead position anyway. So it's across the spectrum of the world right now that there are two groups. The world is split now into those who follow logical paths and patterns and those who don't. And there's no coming together. It's as opposite as two different ends of the political spectrum. You know, it's male and female, right? I mean, it's just complete opposites. It's not going to, you know, that's why the coming together of man and woman in a relationship to form a family is the center of the entire universe, because man and woman are essentially entirely different. Not just physically, emotionally, biologically. I mean, yeah, we've got human, but we're essentially completely different. And this coming together and this organization and understanding is and the success of it is necessary for society to work. And just take my own example as well. If you look around at society, there's a lot of conflict and a lot of failed relationships, simply because people don't understand that you have to work really hard to make things work. It's not automatic, because if you start thinking it's automatic, like if the company creates a system and they think, oh, this system will make everything great automatically, it's destined to fail. It won't work because it forgets that people are human, and part of humanity is making mistakes that move us forward. Alexander Fleming was a Scottish physician, doctor, scientist who discovered penicillin that we use as the basic for antibiotics, right? But he didn't discover it by looking for it. He discovered it by experimenting and found it by accident. By accident, serendipity. Yeah, it was just a lucky chance that he discovered it. And that is what is important in so much of our life and discovery. It's the ability to find the positive within the negative. Yeah, that makes us human and makes us better. Like when your daughter, let's go back to kids, when your daughter paints on the wall or writes on the wall, you are going to have to find a way to communicate with her about how positive it is, not how negative it is. It might be wrong, right? So when your daughter writes on the wall or paints on the wall, you're going to have to find a way to communicate with her about how positive that is, even though it's wrong from your perspective. Yeah, and it's the same when a boss has employees. Yeah, if the employee makes a mistake doing what they think is right, but is actually not correct, then the boss has to find a way of communicating with the employee about the positive nature of the mistake in order to move forward. Because if it's all negative, there's nothing good that will come from it. Yeah. So it's the nature with children, when we tell children, you know, it's a learning process and we give you time. And it's the same experience that very often a lot of employers have with their employees, where they've got to look at it and say, okay, painting on the wall was an experiment. It wasn't an attempt to destroy the wall. It was an attempt to find just a creative outlet for whatever was happening. And we've lost a little bit of that in society, where we're telling people, you can't do this and you can't do that and you can't experiment and you can't, you everything has to be fixed in a certain way, and there's no flexibility in it. And the flexibility is what allows us to grow, right? Everything's got to be look at nature. The tree has branches, and when the wind blows strong, the branches will bend. And they have to bend, because if they don't bend, they break. And we need that flexibility in everything that we do. And of course, there's limits to everything as well, within reason. But it's another example of understanding that people have lost contact with what's normal. They've lost touch with what's, or people use the word, it's a personal thing, people use the word normal like it means good. It's a language thing, right? Where, well, it's the normal process, but that doesn't mean it's good. And people also don't like to be challenged on those points, because they tend to think of, well, it's normal, there's not really going to be any other way of doing it. But again, it's necessary for progress to point out to people when it might be normal for someone to drink 3 bottles of whiskey a day, but it's not. That doesn't mean it's good, but it doesn't mean it's a good thing, right? It might be, and it doesn't have to be the example of whiskey. I mean, it could be that a person does too much of anything. You can do too much exercise in the gym. You can overtrain. A lot of athletes overtrain and do too much and damage their bodies that way. So the people's association of normal with good, it's got to be checked to see if it's actually true, and that's a problem, because we're post-normal and we're post-truth, and we're post-logic, and we're told we can't have discussions about these things. And it's crazy, because we need to have an open, as marketers and business people, we need conversation, we need dialogue. The word conversation, okay, dialogue requires conversation. The word, and dialogue, 2 people talking, right? Let's break it down. Conversation, the root of conversation is converse, which is convert. Now that's a key term in business, to convert, which really means to sell. Yeah. And you sell, you convert through conversation, which is dialogue, not monologue, right? Not directive, yeah, which actually has die in it, but that means between 2 points, but that's a different thing. And if a company is telling its employees, as many companies are, oh, just make a video and send it to clients, that's not a conversation. You can't convert from that, because you can't react or respond as you need to. You can't differentiate. You can, as the Americans say, you can't move the ball down the park. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to move the ball down the park to get it closer to the end zone at the other end, in order to score a point. And you can't do that really through monologue. It's all conversion. It's also a religious term. It's not just a business term. It's a religious term, because you convert, you change your habits and lifestyle to a specific religion. Yeah. All conversion, as far as I'm aware, comes through conversation between people, because that's what moves people. It's what helps people. It's what makes people realize. It's what makes people feel better. And that requires two sides, and that requires that both people be open and willing and understanding. It's not going to happen in a lot of bigger organizations where, once again, people's hands are tied. The long-term prospect for Western society, from a business perspective, is the closure of so many businesses because they fail to understand the human element there. And we might even be post-commercialism, post-capitalism, and post-democracy at this point. I don't know, but I mean, observations of society would suggest that people are thinking that we don't need to market to sell. People are thinking that the high streets are over, or putting out this message that that way of retail is done and finished. And people are feeling that their representatives in government, local and national, are not listening in the right way. They're listening top down instead of bottom up. And growth probably comes when these two things meet each other. Not exactly sure, but both the company and the consumer have needs, and both of these needs have to be met. The company needs what it needs to survive, and the consumer needs what the consumer needs to survive. And they have to come together, and they can't come together without a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation. So and that means that means, and that's what that means when I say that we're human. It means two things. Number one, we hurt, we feel pain, and we can hurt other people as well, and we have to be aware of that in our actions. Yeah. That that there's gonna be a certain level of pain in life which we all have to live with, but we have to realize what we're doing and not be blind to the things that we can't see, and which I see is, for me the biggest problem that people have, and this is what you have already realized in doing what you're doing. You have already come to the understanding that there's what's called blindness, right? Now, what this is some people are blind to some things, like we all are, right? Yeah, which is that goes back to Jesus's Sermon on the Mount, where, it's Jesus's famous speech where they are seeing but do not see, they listen but do not hear, right? And what this is, and then what that leads to is, Jesus being crucified on the cross, which is forgive them, for they know not what they do. They know not what they do, because they listen but do not hear, and seeing do not see. And the point is blindness of blindness. So some people are blind to some things. That's a natural human state. And perhaps we need to be, because if we saw everything, it would be too much. If we knew everything, it would be too much. We can't. We can't. It's beyond our abilities. But some people are blind to the fact that they're blind. They don't know that they don't know.
Right.
And that's one of the greatest challenges in moving anything forward, which is, how do you get someone to see what they can't see, or to know what they can't know, when they don't even know it's there, or they even resist it. They refuse to believe that it's there, which is extremely difficult, because there's something called human ego, which is this the dark voice within ourselves, which refuses to believe something that is true, that we all have to deal with. It's usually related to self, but it might be related to other things as well. There's almost no solution that I know about in the physical world, in terms of business. Is very practical, right? Business is really about products and sales and moving things, and it's pretty sensible, right? I want to get this from here to there so that we can use this to perform this task and get this job done and keep these people happy. It's very sensible. It's very logical. It's very practical, and it needs to be approached in that way. But and when we stop doing that, when we stop doing that, we encounter problems. When we start to treat the practicality like a religion, but then you still need to take a leap of faith at the end of the day. It's very crazy, but and faith, not hope, because hope is, wishing that somebody else will do something for you. Here's everything you want. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Gosh, I hope somebody does. Everybody's waiting for Superman. Superman's not coming. It's not coming, right? Superman's not coming. Spider-Man's not coming. Iron Man's not coming. None of those Marvel, DC characters, whoever, whatever. They're not coming. Everyone's waiting for someone to come and save them. And the fundamental teachings of almost all religions are that it lies with the self to make the decisions. But the blindness is a problem, because it's in a lot of businesses. It's in a lot of management positions. It's I've had to deal with it personally a lot over the last year. I listened to somebody a few weeks ago say that government would never do anything that harms children. And to unpack that statement, I could spend hours unpacking that statement, because first of all, government is people. It's not about the organization. It's about the individual people. And you can't group everyone as the same. We're not. You try. And we collectively go in certain directions. Like some people like football, and some people like, I don't know, walking up hills, and stuff, and some people like cycling, and so we do tend to collect in different areas, but it's not really who we are, and we can change if we want to. But and it's blindness, and the only solution. Sorry to be all Christian, but the only solution found in the Bible, because Jesus was like banging his head against the wall, right? He was like walking around going, I can't take this anymore. This is just insane. And society was doing the same thing. It was just banging their heads against the wall. We're not going anywhere. We're not moving forward. We're not progressing. And the only solution that was discovered, apart from the fact that later on science discovered that, if you got the right vitamins and you eat carrots and things, then your eyesight is improved, and you should take care of your general health and hygiene and look after yourself, all of which was practical. The only solution was that Jesus went and spat on his fingers and said to somebody, do you believe that you can see? Do you believe? And the person said yes, and then he rubbed his fingers in the person's eyes and said, go and wash your eyes. And the person went and washed their eyes, and they could see. That's not going to help us. right? That's not going to help us, because it's about belief. It's about what you believe that will change everything. And it's not practical to go and spit in people's eyes. You're going to make them more sick than actually healthy. So there's no solution. We have to find, we have to know that we can't fight against that problem, which you've discovered already, which is good. And when we stop, I don't know if you can tell me if this is true. When we stop fighting against the problem, another door opens, which is thinking about other ways. Where our energy transfer, right? We don't lose that energy that we lost fighting against the problem that we can't change. We can take that energy and we can use it for better things. We can use it for our families, for our partners, for our children, for our friends, for the people around about us. And the psychologist Jordan Peterson has a quote, which is, life is either a tragedy or a comedy. You choose. And I like that, because it realizes that it's a tragedy if you waste your energy and your time on the wrong things. If we're forever fighting things that we can't change. If I go outside of this building and I push the building and I'm like, I'm going to move this building all by myself, I'm not going to get anywhere, and I'll get tired, and people will think I'm crazy because I'm trying to do the impossible. People might, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to build some muscles, but probably not, right? So, that's the tragedy, not realizing the mistakes. And you don't want the tragedy, you want the comedy. You want to be able to laugh at the problems. You want to be able to have fun and make jokes about the problems. Where we see it now, like in social media, where people make a joke about something, and then they get deleted from the social media platform. They get banned from that platform. It's, oh my gosh, you can't make a joke about that. It's like, well, if it's not a comedy, it's a tragedy. And so the ability of people hopefully, like me and you and hundreds of millions of other people, to talk about something, anything, and to smile about it and to realize how crazy it is the solution to the problem. Because the alternative is tragedy, which is anger and frustration and resentment and annoyance and a whole group of negative emotions that we fill our heads with, and then our partners have to deal with us being shit and feeling shit, and our kids have to deal with us being shit and feeling shit, and it's not worth it. It's not worth it. It's better to sometimes it's better just to say fuck it and grab your surfboard and go and surf. Sometimes, okay? You know, sometimes it's better to go and do what gives you joy. Sometimes, yeah. Don't don't avoid the necessary difficult tasks of life, but that, and we need to teach that to children as well, which is that you have to seek joy in that, those things that not only situations where not only do you put energy in, but it feeds you back. And because that's the comedic element of the human situation. Whereas if aliens came from another planet and they landed here and they looked at our world, they would laugh. They really would. We have to assume that they're more intelligent than us because they've built spaceships and they travel through space. We have to assume that. It would seem semi-sensible to do that. But they would look at us and they would laugh, right? And they would get back in their spaceships and fly away again because it would just be funny. I mean, it's what kind of comedy is this? Okay, so you know that I saw this post on social media and it resonated with me, where it just said, like, how is it possible the Taliban took over Afghanistan and were completely unaffected by a global pandemic when they live in caves and had no social distancing and wore no masks for an entire year, right? You know, they're completely unaffected, right? And the result of them living their normal life is that they now have control of a country. Yeah. And I thought about it, and you know, because the truth hits you, right? When somebody says something that's true, it hits you like a truck, you know, or a train. It hits you when you hear something which is true and you're open to the truth. And I read that and I thought, that's a great point. That's a great point. The media will have me looking for this great invisible danger which is everywhere, or you know, somebody will hit you with the truth and you'll be like, yeah, like maybe your partner will say, let it go. And you'll be like, okay. And for whatever reason, that situation will improve or get better or something, you know, or your friends will say, let it go, or somebody will point out the fact that when you hold onto the hot coal, you get burned. And it's not always a good thing to want to do. So let's move from the past and present into the future, and